video 3, the forearms. Now here's where we begin cutting the insides. The forearms are the first pieces I did, so cutting into these things is all about finding the right angle to get at the pieces you need to cut. The cutting disc on the end of the Dremel. Now this video is going to be a mixture of 2 times, 8 times, 16 times, and even 32 times, because when I started the video was 4.5 hours long. I didn't figure anybody wanted to watch me cut plastic for 4.5 hours, so I sped it up quite a bit. In some sections I cut out a lot of stuff. You can see there every once in a while there's a big puff of plastic goes right in my face. That's why you should be wearing a mask. So this is me on the night of the 28th of October, and I'm yelling at myself whenever that was recorded like a month ago, hey, you're an idiot, wear a mask. Alright, so another trick that I learned while doing this is kind of like chunking away the material. When you get to a certain spot, and there's a good example of it later, you get to a certain spot where you can't actually get the angle you need to cut it, what you can do is take a bunch of bites out of it with the disc. Oh, you see that? There was a spark. So I'm going to use a ice pick there to poke out the screw. Anyway, you take a bunch of cuts out of the piece that you need out of the way, and then you can come up through it even though you don't have the right angle, because the pieces are small enough to where the disc will still cut it. There's a better example of that later when I cut through the other forearm. Now, the right forearm and the right upper arm were much harder than the left forearm and the left upper arm. You can see the whole left arm over there on the table. That's all one piece. There's no screws, so there's no posts, there's no things holding it together. It was one of the best parts to do of this whole project, because you just cut it off of the black parts and then you cut the holes so that they're smooth and you're done. Now while doing this project I got quite a few actually, little micro blisters I'd call them. Tiny little blisters. The tiny piece of hot plastic will land on you and burn you. So I guess you could wear gloves. They're not really that big of a deal. There I'm using my ice pick type tool to remove those black things. I found out those were rubber. I thought they were just plastic, but they're actually rubber. So they don't cut very good with the Dremel. I just poke at them and pull them out. It's not actually an ice pick, it's a screwdriver that I sharpened into an ice pick, because that's a pretty useful tool to have, and I just stab it in the wall up there above my saw. Another thing you learn while you're doing this is, as tempting as it is to move that piece of plastic you just cut out of the way, probably just leave it alone, because when you grab hot plastic, that's not fun. So you can see my pile of cutout pieces is slowly growing. There, now you can see it's big enough for an arm to go through it. There's a little bit more cleanup to do to it, and it'll be done here in a minute. Then we'll move on to the left arm. Now there I was doing the chunk trick to get those screw posts out. Just kind of take slice, 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 and then move on up. Now the top of that arm, I think I've said this several times now, that's going to be the head of the mannequin. Up there, that little post that's on the top of the arm. There we go. Here I'm going to dance a little jig. I'm going to say yay, because I looked inside there and saw there was no plastic to cut off, and I got pretty happy. Here, after I get this little nub off, there's a good example of the little chunk trick. There's slice, 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 and then up right through the material. And then slice, 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 and then up through the material. You got to do that a lot in this because there's not very good angles. And there we got Jackson helping. I gave him a little sander. It's a multi-tool sander. And I'm over there finishing to cut the arm. So the process here is we cut it, make sure it fits, then we sand it. And after we sand it, we take it over to the sink and use a scotchbrite on it to smooth it out a little bit and get out all the melted plastic. And here I'm going to go ahead and take the mannequin apart and ruin his feet. It's important during this that you try it on your kid periodically, make sure it fits. You don't want to go too far and have to go back to the beginning. So after we scotchbrite it, we rinse it off in the sink, let it dry. Then you'll see later on we put padding in there and strapping and elastic to hold it together. So here I am breaking the feet. I put some tape on there, it's gaffer's tape. Cut them at an angle because I thought if the thing was leaning backwards that it would stand up and wouldn't fall over. And you can see that it works. Here I am, yay, it stands, woohoo, for all of what? 20 minutes till the tape runs out. I even went back and put more tape on it and it still didn't work. So I came up with a better solution. That'll be in a later video. Here I'm going to attach the head that I was talking about. I'm using Durham's Rock Hard Putty. Now this stuff is great. It's water based. You mix it with water and then you make a paste. And the cool thing about it is you can make that paste as liquidy or as hard as you want. As thick as you want. So I'm going to make it pretty thick here so that I can turn it upside down and it won't run everywhere. But you can make it thin too. And you can either use hot water or cold water. And depending on what you use is how fast it'll set up. So in my opinion, it's a much better solution than Bondo for certain things, like crafting, because you can control how thick it is, whereas Bondo, you can't really do that unless you add like fiberglass to it and make some rondo. So I've been using that rock hard putty for a lot of stuff, and in my opinion, I mean, it's a staple to have around the house. You can fix just about anything with that. Here I'm using a buffing wheel. It's like a little scotchbrite pad on the end of your Dremel. And then, man, it eats through that plastic pretty good. But the plastic fights back and you end up with a little nub by the time you're done. And we did some more sanding that I just cut out. We sanded quite a bit. And now it's padding time. That right there is a piece of floor mat foam. And it's a leftover piece from a project I did before, and it worked out fine, so I'm just going to cut strips out of it. Or it's already a strip. I'm going to cut it into strips, shorter ones. I'm going to put it in there and just glue it in place. I'm going to leave some overlap, as you can see, and that'll help align this piece since it comes apart. It's going to come apart so he can put his hand through it and then go back together with the elastic straps. But those padding strips will not only pad his arm from the plastic, but it'll keep it in place and it will align the piece so that it snaps together correctly. Now you need a sharp knife here to cut the floor mat foam, some elastic to hold everything together, and you're going to need a sharp knife. I'm going to put it on there with Barge. I believe I already thanked Evil Ted for turning me on to Barge. It works perfect to attach this floor mat foam to these plastic pieces. So I cut out the drying time here. I didn't figure you wanted to watch glue dry. And then I'm going to cut the pieces at a 45-degree angle after they're glued on, because it was kind of hard to get it to snap together right. But when I cut it at a 45-degree angle, it just kind of slid together and it was perfect. There we go, we're going to try it on. You can see in a second here, pressure fit for the most part. So obviously it worked out pretty good. There's me cutting them at a 45. Here's me adding the elastic strapping. Again, I'm going to attach it with barge. I'm not sure how well that's going to last. If it doesn't last, I'll either add magnets or clips or something. If you have a better idea than any of that, add it to the comments below. And when it falls apart, or if it falls apart, then I will go back at that time and fix it. Hopefully maybe using a comment from below. I didn't wait long enough when I did the straps. Should have waited a little longer. Now this one, it doesn't come apart like the other one, so on the part where his hand slips out, I couldn't put a full ring. I just put a couple of those nubs that I cut off of the other strip. So there's a full ring on the back, on the top of it, but on the bottom where his wrist is, I just put those three in there. And that's it. Like, share, subscribe. Hopefully we'll make it by Halloween. We'll see.